Tonight, the city's elite gather under the blaze of 1,000 flashbulbs. On the red carpet, billionaire titan Richard Sterling presents his magnum opus, a film destined for glory. On his arm is not his pregnant wife, but his mistress, Victoria Vance, draped in diamonds and defiance. The world watches, whispering of the scandalous affair. But the real story isn't the betrayal they see. It's the one they don't. In the shadows, a black town car glides to a halt. The door opens, and the real power behind the entire spectacle, the secret investor who funded every frame of this drama, is about to step into the light. And she's here to collect. The penthouse on Central Park West was less a home and more a museum of a life Olivia Hale felt she was merely curating. Every surface gleamed with a sterile perfection. Florentine marble floors, a collection of Rothkos that bled color into the vast white spaces, and floor-to-ceiling windows that presented New York City as a glittering, silent tableau. It was a life purchased, not built, a gilded cage constructed by her husband, Richard Sterling. From the outside, they were the city's golden couple. The self-made real estate and tech mogul, with a jawline as sharp as his business acumen. She the elegant, Wellesley-educated heiress to a quiet, old-money fortune. Their union 10 years prior had been the society event of the decade, a merger of New World ambition and Old World legacy. Olivia's family, the Hales, had built their wealth over generations in shipping and logistics, a silent, steady accumulation of power that dwarfed Richard's more ostentatious empire. But Olivia, reserved and intellectual, had never been comfortable with the weight of her inheritance. She had fallen for Richard's energy, his relentless drive, his promise to build a world so dazzling it would eclipse the long shadows of her ancestry. Now she understood he hadn't built a world for them. He had built one for him, and she was simply its most valuable and most trapped acquisition. At 7 months pregnant, the cage felt smaller than ever. The baby, a boy, was a constant, fluttering reminder of the life she was bringing into this cold, curated world. Richard had been ecstatic about the pregnancy, but his joy felt performative. He saw the child not as a son, but as an heir, the final piece in the Sterling dynasty puzzle. He commissioned a nursery designed by Ken Folk, filled it with bespoke toys from Bonpoint, and spoke of boarding schools in Switzerland before the baby even had a name. He never asked Olivia how she felt. He never touched her belly with genuine wonder. He simply approved blueprints and signed checks. Her days were a meticulously scheduled rotation of prenatal yoga charity luncheons at the Modern and Fittings, with her personal stylist for events she had no desire to attend. Richard insisted on her presence, her serene beauty, a perfect accessory to his power. He controlled everything: her schedule, her social circle, even her opinions in public, often finishing her sentences with a proprietary smile. "What my brilliant wife means to say is," he would begin before twisting her words into something that better served his narrative. She had long ago stopped correcting him. It was easier to retreat into the quiet world of her books and her private thoughts, a place he could not access. Her only true confidant was Benjamin Carter, the Hale family's long-serving financial advisor. A man in his late 60s, with kind eyes and a mind like a steel trap, Benjamin had known Olivia since she was a child. He managed the Hale Trust, a vast and complex entity that Olivia had inherited upon her parents' death 5 years ago. Richard, despite his best efforts, had never been granted access. It was the one part of her life that was exclusively hers, a fortress of financial independence he both resented and coveted. He's leveraging Sterling Industries to the hilt for this film project. Benjamin had told her during their discreet weekly meeting at a private club, his voice a low murmur over the clink of silverware. He's calling it Ascendant, says it will be his legacy. He's poured nearly $100 million into it, and from what my sources tell me, the production is a chaotic mess. Olivia had felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. He tells me it's a guaranteed success, an Oscar contender. Benjamin had given her a pitying look. Olivia Richard is a brilliant bully in a boardroom. He knows nothing about filmmaking. He's hired a sycophantic director and is throwing money at problems that require artistry, not cash. The whispers in Hollywood are not kind. This was Richard's latest obsession. For the past year, Ascendant had consumed him. It was a bloated, self-important historical epic that he believed would cement his place not just as a titan of industry, but as a cultural icon. He spoke of it with a religious fervor, a passion he no longer reserved for his wife. And lately that passion seemed to be shared with another, Victoria Vance. Victoria was a painfully ambitious actress with a minor role in the film. Olivia had seen her name on casting sheets, and then with increasing frequency in gossip columns, pictured laughing a little too closely with Richard at industry events. She was everything Olivia was not: loud, overtly sensual, and desperate for the spotlight. Richard dismissed Olivia's concerns with practiced ease. "She's just part of the cast, darling. It's business. You're being hormonal." He used her pregnancy as a shield for his deceit, a convenient excuse for her intuition. The premiere was in 2 weeks, the culmination of Richard's grand ambition. It was to be held at the iconic TCL Chinese Theatre in Hollywood, a spectacle of unmatched glamour. A custom gown from Valentino hung in Olivia's closet, its soft ethereal fabric a stark contrast to the hard reality of her life. Richard had planned every detail of the night, envisioning their triumphant walk down the red carpet, his pregnant wife a symbol of his virility and stability, a Madonna for his burgeoning dynasty. But Olivia had her own plans. For months she had been moving her own pieces across the board, quietly, patiently. While Richard was busy playing movie mogul, she had been in near daily contact with Benjamin Carter. They hadn't been just talking. They had been strategizing. She had spent countless hours in a discreet office Benjamin had secured for her, mid-town, poring over financial statements, legal documents, and market analyses. The quiet, bookish heiress Richard thought he had married was a facade. Beneath it was the mind of her father, a shrewd and calculating strategist who had taught her that true power was never loud. It was silent, invisible, until the moment it struck. The Valentino gown would remain in its garment bag. She had commissioned another dress, a bespoke creation from Dior, its design a secret. It was a gown for a queen, not an accessory. As Richard finalized the seating charts for his big night, blissfully unaware, Olivia reviewed the final wire transfer confirmation on her encrypted laptop. The sum was staggering enough to make Richard's entire net worth look like pocket change. The transfer was complete. Phoenix Legacy Capital, a shell corporation she had established months ago, was now the sole owner of the Ascendant film project and its parent production company. Richard believed he was walking into his coronation. In reality, he was walking into a meticulously set trap. And Olivia, the woman he had underestimated, ignored and bejeweled, was about to become the architect of his spectacular downfall. The gilded cage was about to be broken, not from the outside, but from within. The 2 weeks leading up to the premiere were a masterclass in deception. Olivia played her part with an Oscar-worthy performance of her own. She was the docile, supportive wife, nodding along to Richard's monologues about distribution deals and marketing strategies. She feigned interest as he showed her clips from the film, his face illuminated by the screen, his ego filling every corner of their cavernous screening room. She saw the film for what it was. A self-indulgent mess, a testament to an unchecked male ego, beautifully shot but emotionally vacant. Her mornings were still for prenatal appointments and quiet contemplation, but her afternoons were a flurry of covert activity. The Midtown office Benjamin had arranged was her war room. Its windows overlooked the anonymous bustle of 6th Avenue, a world away from the judgmental quiet of her penthouse. Here, surrounded by files and protected by layers of security, she was not Mrs. Sterling. She was Olivia Hale, CEO, of her own destiny. With Benjamin's guidance, she had executed a complex financial maneuver. Richard's production company, Sterling Pictures, had been bleeding cash. He had taken out high-interest bridge loans from predatory lenders to keep the spiraling budget of Ascendant afloat using his own company's stock as collateral. He was over-leveraged and desperate. Olivia, through Phoenix Legacy Capital, had anonymously bought that debt, all of it. Then she'd offered a lifeline, a full buyout of the production company, and all its assets, including the film. Desperate to avoid a margin call that would crater his public company's stock price, Richard had agreed, blinded by the belief that some faceless European fund was bailing him out. He had no idea he had sold his legacy to the woman sleeping in his bed. The paperwork was signed by proxies. The money was wired through a labyrinth of international banks. To Richard, it was just a smart, if slightly humbling, business deal that saved him from ruin. He had boasted to Olivia about it one evening, over a dinner she barely touched. "Some fund out of Luxembourg saw the genius in the project," he'd said, swirling a glass of Chateau Margaux. "They paid a premium. They know it's a winner. It just proves my instincts were right all along." Olivia had simply smiled and placed a hand on her belly, a gesture he mistook for placid agreement. The whispers grew louder. Her society friends, women whose lives were a tapestry of gossip and alliances, began calling with feigned concern. "Darling, I saw Richard at Balthazar with that actress." One might say, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "They looked so cozy. I'm sure it was just a business lunch." Olivia would thank them for their concern, her voice a calm, even sea, giving them no drama to feed on. She knew their pity was a performance, their calls a way to gauge the impending scandal. The true betrayal wasn't just the affair, it was the sheer disrespect. Richard had grown careless, arrogant. He started leaving his phone unlocked. One afternoon, while he was in the shower, a message flashed on the screen. It was from Victoria. "Can't wait to have you all to myself on the carpet. Let the old money hag watch from home. This is our night." A wave of nausea, wholly unrelated to her pregnancy, washed over Olivia. The clinical, business-like nature of her plan suddenly became intensely personal. It wasn't just about reclaiming her assets. It was about reclaiming her dignity. She forwarded the message to a secure email address. Another piece of evidence for the growing file her legal team, headed by the formidable divorce attorney Fiona Shaw, was compiling. Fiona was a shark in a Chanel suit, known for dismantling narcissistic husbands with surgical precision. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad on infidelity. Olivia, Fiona had assured her during a video call, but this, the financial deception, the commingling of funds he thought were his to finance this dalliance, this is grounds for a complete voiding of his claims. We will leave him with nothing but his tailored suits. The day before they were due to fly to Los Angeles, the final piece of Olivia's plan fell into place. Richard had installed a new piece of art in their foyer, a garish, oversized sculpture he'd paid a fortune for. As the installers left, Olivia noticed a discrepancy on the invoice left on the hall table. It was billed to the Hale Trust. She felt a cold fury course through her. He had become so arrogant that he was now forging her digital signature to buy trinkets for their home, her home. He was stealing from her brazenly. She called Benjamin immediately. "He's been accessing the household accounts linked to the trust, Ben, for non-essentials, for art, for wine, for God knows what else." Benjamin's voice was grim. "I'll run a full audit. This is wire fraud, Olivia. It's a federal crime. This is the nail in the coffin." That evening, Richard came home buzzing with excitement for the trip. He found Olivia in the nursery, standing over the crib. "Look at this, Liv," he said, holding out a stunning diamond necklace. "A little something for my leading lady to wear tomorrow night. It's a Harry Winston. Nothing but the best for you." Olivia looked at the cold, glittering stones. She knew it had likely been purchased with her own money. She pictured Victoria's smug text. "Our night." She forced a smile, allowing him to fasten the clasp around her neck. The diamonds felt like ice against her skin. "It's beautiful, Richard. Thank you." He kissed her cheek, a perfunctory gesture. "Get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow the world is going to see what a sterling can do." "Oh, I'm sure it will," Olivia said softly, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. "I am absolutely sure of it." He missed the chilling certainty in her tone. He saw only his pregnant wife, adorned in his diamonds, ready to play her part. As he slept that night, a deep, untroubled sleep of the pathologically arrogant, Olivia sat in the darkness of their living room. The city lights spread out before her. She was not a victim waiting for her fate. She was a general on the eve of battle, her strategy complete, her armies in position, waiting for the dawn. The silk corridors of her life had been full of whispers of his betrayal, but the loudest sound was the one no one else could hear, the ticking of a clock counting down to his ruin. The Los Angeles air was thick with the scent of exhaust fumes and night-blooming jasmine, a uniquely Hollywood perfume. The sky was a bruised twilight purple, a dramatic backdrop for the Klieg lights crisscrossing in front of the TCL Chinese Theater. Hollywood Boulevard was shut down for blocks, a river of black town cars, flowing toward the premiere of Ascendant. It was the biggest event of the season, and the atmosphere crackled with an energy that was part anticipation, part bloodlust. Richard Sterling, true to form, had ensured the spectacle was monumental. The red carpet, a shade of crimson so deep it looked almost black under the relentless flash of cameras, was wider and longer than regulation. An orchestra played the film's overwrought score from a raised platform. The press line was a gauntlet of reporters and television crews from every major outlet, a shouting, jostling pack of hyenas, sensing a kill. Olivia watched it all from a live feed on a tablet inside her own car, parked a block away on a quiet side street. She was in a black Escalade, with tinted windows so dark they were practically opaque. Beside her sat Fiona Shaw, her lawyer exuding an aura of lethal calm. On Olivia's lap was a slim leather portfolio containing the documents that would detonate her husband's world. She was dressed in the custom Dior gown, a masterpiece of midnight blue silk that fell in elegant folds over her pregnant form. It was a statement of power and grace, the armor for the battle ahead. She felt preternaturally calm, the frantic anxiety of the past months having coalesced into a sharp, diamond-hard focus. "He's arriving," Fiona said, her eyes fixed on the screen. On the tablet, Richard's Rolls-Royce Phantom, pulled up to the curb. The door opened and he emerged, beaming, resplendent, in a Tom Ford tuxedo. He waved to the crowd, a practiced, regal gesture. He was a king arriving at his coronation. Then he turned and extended his hand. But the hand that took his was not Olivia's. Victoria Vance stepped out of the car. She was a vision of calculated provocation. Her dress was a sliver of gold lame that clung to her body like a second skin, its neckline plunging to her navel. She was draped in diamonds that were clearly on loan, but she wore them as if they were her birthright. She clung to Richard's arm, her smile a triumphant, predatory slash of red lipstick. A collective gasp, audible even through the tablet's speaker, rippled through the press line. The cacophony of camera shutters intensified, becoming a frantic, percussive roar. Reporters began shouting questions, not about the film, but about the woman on the director's arm. "Richard, where's Olivia? Is this your official date? Mr. Sterling." "Victoria, are you the new Mrs. Sterling?" Richard handled it with the smooth arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable. He held up a hand for quiet, a smug grin playing on his lips. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is about celebrating art. My wife, Olivia, is resting at home. Her pregnancy has been a bit tiring and she sends her deepest regrets. But she wanted me to have a wonderful night, and the lovely Victoria, one of our brilliant stars, was gracious enough to accompany me." He delivered the lie without a flicker of shame. He had painted Olivia as a frail, delicate creature, too weak to attend his triumph, while he paraded his mistress as a vibrant stand-in. It was a public dismissal, a calculated humiliation designed to put her in her place. Victoria, for her part, lapped it up. She posed and preened, tilting her head, just so ensuring the cameras caught the glint of the teardrop diamond earrings that Olivia recognized from a recent receipt she'd found. She whispered in Richard's ear, laughing as he squeezed her hand. They were not just attending an event. They were staking a claim, announcing their union to the world on the biggest stage imaginable. Inside the Escalade, Olivia felt a cold, clear rage settle over her. She watched Richard steer Victoria down the carpet, stopping for interviews with Entertainment Tonight and Variety. He spoke glowingly of the film of his vision, of the incredible journey. Victoria stood beside him, nodding her eyes wide with adoration, a perfect portrait of the devoted ingenue. They were a team, a partnership built on her money and his lies. "Are you ready?" Fiona asked gently, her voice cutting through Olivia's icy focus. Olivia looked away from the screen, her reflection a pale, determined oval in the darkened window. The woman on the screen, the weak, tired wife resting at home, was a fiction Richard had created. The woman in this car was the reality he had ignored. He just sealed his fate, Olivia said, her voice devoid of emotion. She opened the leather portfolio, her manicured fingers tracing the embossed logo of Phoenix Legacy Capital. He thinks this is his masterpiece. He has no idea he's just the star of mine. She took a deep, steadying breath, the life inside her giving a gentle kick as if in agreement. "Let's go," she said to the driver. "It's time for the investor to make an appearance." The Escalade pulled out from the side street, its engine a low growl. It bypassed the long line of cars and, following a pre-arranged route with the event security that Olivia's team had organized, headed directly for the front of the theater. It glided past the press line, a silent black shark moving through chaotic waters. As Richard and Victoria posed for one last set of photos at the theater entrance, basking in the apex of their stolen moment, the Escalade came to a stop just behind them. The cameras, momentarily distracted, swung toward the new arrival. A security guard, one of Olivia's, stepped forward and opened the rear door. A single elegant heel in a matching midnight blue Dior pump touched the crimson carpet. Then another. Olivia emerged from the car. She stood for a moment, letting the scene wash over her. The flashing lights, the shouting reporters, the stunned, confused faces. She saw Richard turn, his smile faltering as he saw her. She watched the color drain from his face, his confident posture crumbling in an instant. She saw Victoria's triumphant smirk curdle into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The whispers died. The shouting stopped. For a single breathless moment, the entire red carpet fell silent. All eyes locked on the pregnant woman in the midnight blue gown who was not supposed to be there. Olivia met her husband's gaze across the sea of stunned faces. Her expression was not one of anger or heartbreak. It was the calm, placid, and utterly terrifying look of a queen arriving to reclaim her throne. The show was about to begin. The interior of the TCL Chinese Theatre was a cathedral of Golden Age Hollywood, its opulent chinoiserie-inspired decor, a testament to a century of cinematic dreams. The air was thick with expensive perfume and the low hum of 1,000 privileged conversations. The industry's most powerful players, studio heads, A-list actors, legendary directors, and ruthless agents had all come to witness Richard Sterling's folly or triumph. The consensus whispered behind manicured hands was leaning heavily toward the former. Richard, having hastily abandoned Victoria, with a publicist on the carpet, had regained some of his composure. He worked the room with the frantic energy of a man trying to outrun a freight train. He glad-handed, he backslapped, he laughed too loudly. He projected an aura of unbothered confidence, but those who knew him well could see the panic tightening the skin around his eyes. He avoided any mention of Olivia, pretending her arrival had been a mirage, a trick of the flashing lights. As the lights dimmed, signaling the start of the presentation, a palpable sense of anticipation filled the theatre. Richard took the stage to a round of polite, if not entirely enthusiastic applause. He stood at the podium, a single spotlight, illuminating him the very picture of the visionary creator he so desperately wanted to be. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "A film is not just a project. It's a dream that takes courage, conviction, and above all vision. Ascendant is my vision. It's a story of greatness, of overcoming insurmountable odds to build a lasting legacy." He spoke for 10 minutes, a rambling, self-aggrandizing speech that was more about his own perceived genius than the film itself. He thanked his cast, his crew, and his partners, all while studiously avoiding the 2-ton elephant in the room, his wife, who was now seated in a discreetly arranged private box overlooking the stage, flanked by Fiona Shaw and 2 stone-faced security guards. As Richard reached his crescendo, preparing to introduce the film, a man in a headset walked onto the stage and handed him a note. Richard's flow faltered. He read the note, his brow furrowing in confusion. He looked out at the expectant faces, a flicker of genuine bewilderment crossing his features. The host of the evening, a well-known late-night personality hired to add a veneer of charm to the proceedings, walked back to the podium. He took the microphone from a stunned Richard. "Ladies and gentlemen, a slight change to our program," the host announced, his professional smile unwavering. "It seems Mr. Sterling has one more key partner to thank tonight. The journey of making a film of this scale is perilous, and often it requires a guardian angel to see it through. Tonight, the primary financial backer of Ascendant, the true force who made this evening possible, has decided to step out of the shadows. Please join me in welcoming the founder and principal of Phoenix Legacy Capital." A confused murmur rippled through the audience. Phoenix Legacy Capital was a name no one in Hollywood knew. Richard stared dumbfounded as a gentle spotlight activated, illuminating the path from the private box to the stage. And then she appeared. Olivia descended the short staircase, moving with an unhurried, regal grace. The midnight blue Dior gown flowed around her, the fabric shimmering under the stage lights. Her pregnancy was not something to be hidden, but a symbol of her vitality, her future. She looked directly at the audience, her expression serene and unreadable. Every eye in the theater was locked on her. The silence was absolute, heavy, and profound. The audience was a who's who of Hollywood and Wall Street people who understood power, money, and betrayal better than anyone. They could smell blood in the water, and they were witnessing the most exquisitely executed corporate and social execution in recent memory. You could see the calculations happening in real time on their faces as they connected the dots: the humiliated wife, the mysterious investment firm, the public flaunting of the mistress. Olivia reached the podium. The host discreetly faded into the background. She stood beside her husband, though a universe seemed to separate them. Richard was ashen, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. He looked as though he'd been struck by lightning. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Olivia turned to him, her voice calm and clear, amplified by the microphone, but intimate in its delivery. "You seem to have forgotten to thank me, Richard." She then turned her attention to the captivated audience. "Good evening," she said, her voice steady and resonant, holding the attention of every person in the room. "My name is Olivia Hale. You may know me as Olivia Sterling. For the past year, my husband has poured his heart and a considerable amount of capital into this film. What he may not have understood is that the capital he was pouring was mine." A collective audible gasp swept through the theater. Victoria Vance, seated in the third row, looked as if she might faint. "When my husband's passion project faced financial ruin," Olivia continued, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, "my private equity firm Phoenix Legacy Capital acquired the film and its parent production company in their entirety. I did this because I too believe in the power of legacy. But legacy is not something you build on a foundation of deceit. It is built on integrity, strength, and truth." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The quiet, devastating precision of her revelation was more powerful than any shouting match could ever be. "I am the sole investor, owner, and executive producer of Ascendant, and I am incredibly proud to present this film to you tonight, the first of many from the newly restructured and rebranded Hale Pictures." She placed a hand on her stomach. "My son, the heir to the Hale legacy, will be born into a world where his mother's strength is the foundation, not her silence. Enjoy the show." With that, she gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The stage lights went down, plunging Richard into darkness, and the theater was bathed in the glow of the screen as the opening credits of the film began to roll. But no one was watching the screen. Every single person was staring at the stage, at the silhouette of Richard Sterling, a king standing amidst the ruins of his own kingdom, utterly and completely dethroned by the queen he never saw coming. The moment the house lights came up after the film, which no one had actually watched, the theater erupted not into applause, but into a frenzy of frantic, hushed communication. iPhones glowed in the darkness like a field of fireflies as agents, producers, and executives messaged their bosses, their assistants, their rivals. The news was already breaking online. Variety and The Hollywood Reporter had reporters typing furiously, their headlines practically writing themselves, Sterling premier stunner, jilted wife, revealed as secret mogul. The aftermath was a perfectly orchestrated whirlwind of Olivia's design. As the crowd began to file out their faces, a mixture of shock and schadenfreude, Richard made a desperate move. He lunged for Olivia, who was being calmly escorted toward a backstage exit by her security team. "Olivia! What the hell was that?" he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. His face contorted in a mask of rage and humiliation. Before he could get within 5 feet of her, one of the security guards, a large, impassive man named Frank, stepped into his path. "Mr. Sterling, I'd advise you to keep your distance. Get out of my way." "That's my wife," Richard snarled, trying to push past him. Olivia stopped and turned, her expression as cool and placid as a frozen lake. "No, Richard," she said, her voice cutting through his anger. "I am your primary shareholder, and you are a liability I am about to liquidate. You are not to speak to me again without your lawyer present." "My lawyer? What are you talking about?" he stammered, the last vestiges of his bravado crumbling. "This is our life, Olivia. Our child. You made it very clear tonight who you consider to be your partner." Olivia replied, her gaze flicking for a split second toward the main floor, where Victoria was being swallowed by a scrum of paparazzi, her face pale and tear-streaked. "As for our child, he will be a Hale. You have forfeited any right to the Sterling name in his life. You'll be hearing from Fiona Shaw in the morning. She'll have the divorce papers. I suggest you find competent counsel. You're going to need it." She turned and walked away without a backward glance, leaving him standing there, impotent and exposed under the harsh backstage lights. His world had been dismantled in less than 15 minutes. The humiliation for Victoria was of a different, more public and arguably more brutal variety. As she tried to flee the theatre, she was cornered. The same reporters who had fawned over her an hour ago were now circling like sharks. "Victoria, were you aware? Mrs. Sterling owned the film. How does it feel to be the other woman in the biggest Hollywood scandal of the year? Richard Sterling is broke. Was he lying to you all along?" Her face, once a portrait of smug triumph, was now a crumpled mess of fear and confusion. Her borrowed diamonds suddenly looked cheap, her dress garish. She was no longer the ascendant star. She was a C-list actress caught in the crossfire of a billionaire's war, a footnote in a story that was now entirely about Olivia Hale. Her agent wasn't answering her calls. The studio car that had brought her was nowhere to be found. She was left stranded on the curb, a pariah in gold lame, as the industry that had momentarily embraced her turned its back with ruthless speed. Backstage, the power dynamics had shifted with seismic force. Harvey Goldstein, the notoriously aggressive head of the film's distribution studio, who had been blowing smoke with Richard all night, now approached Olivia's temporary green room, his face wreathed in a sycophantic smile. "Olivia, may I call you Olivia?" "A masterful piece of theatre," he boomed, attempting to take her hand. "Absolutely brilliant. I knew this film had a visionary behind it. I told my team, I said, this project has a quiet strength, a real intelligence." "It was you all along," Fiona Shaw intercepted him. "Mr. Goldstein, all future communications regarding distribution will go through my office. We will be in touch to renegotiate your deal given the change in ownership." Goldstein's smile faltered. He was a shark who had just realized he was in a tank with a great white. He nodded meekly and backed away. The chaos spread. Richard's phone was blowing up with calls from his board of directors at Sterling Industries, from his bankers, from his PR team, who were in full-blown panic mode. The stock for Sterling Industries was predicted to go into free fall when the market opened. News of his financial recklessness of leveraging the public company to fund his private folly was leaking. The SEC would surely be launching an investigation by morning. Olivia, meanwhile, was an island of tranquility in the hurricane she had created. In the back of the Escalade, speeding away from the theater, she took off the Harry Winston necklace Richard had given her. It felt tainted. She handed it to Fiona. "See that this is returned, and check the provenance. I have a feeling it was purchased fraudulently." Fiona nodded, placing it carefully in her briefcase. "The wire fraud charges will be the final nail. He won't know what hit him." For the first time that night, Olivia allowed herself a moment to feel the weight of it all. It was not triumph she felt. Not exactly. It was a grim sense of finality. A necessary amputation. She had cut out the diseased part of her life to save herself and her child. She placed a hand on her belly, where a gentle flutter reminded her of the future. The reckoning was not just about Richard's downfall. It was about her own ascent. From the ashes of her marriage, Phoenix Legacy Capital was truly born, and so was she. The real work was just beginning. The days that followed the premiere were not a whirlwind of chaotic emotion, but a campaign of systematic and ruthless efficiency. While Richard Sterling was publicly imploding, Olivia Hale was quietly building an empire on the rubble of his. She operated not out of a gleaming skyscraper, but from the discreet, elegant offices of Hale Pictures, the newly christened company that had once been Sterling Pictures. The name change was the first order of business, a symbolic and legal cleansing. The Sterling name, once a mark of aggressive success, was now synonymous with scandal, fraud, and public humiliation. Fiona Shaw. Olivia's attorney filed for divorce the morning after the premiere. The petition was delivered to a disheveled Richard at the Beverly Hills Hotel, where he had been holed up, refusing to take calls. The documents were a work of legal art. They cited the infidelity clause in their prenuptial agreement, which was now indisputable thanks to his red carpet stunt. But Fiona went further. She attached a thick appendix detailing Richard's financial malfeasance, the fraudulent use of trust funds, the commingling of personal and corporate assets, and the wire fraud related to his unauthorized purchases. "He's been served," Fiona informed Olivia via a secure video call. "His legal team is in shock. They thought his prenup was airtight. They never imagined you had the evidence to have it thrown out entirely and sue him for damages." Richard's arrogance had been his undoing. He had assumed Olivia was the passive, ignorant wife he had molded her to be. He never imagined she would have the foresight to have their prenup amended 5 years prior, shortly after her parents' death with the help of Benjamin Carter. The amendment, which Richard had barely glanced at before signing, contained a bad actor clause of draconian severity. Any criminal financial activity or gross mismanagement involving her personal or trust assets would render the entire agreement null and void and revert all claims back to her. The SEC launched its formal investigation into Sterling Industries within 48 hours. The news sent the stock plummeting by 70%. The board of directors, in a desperate act of self-preservation, convened an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to oust Richard as chairman and CEO. He was escorted from the building that bore his name by security, a final ignominious exit captured by a lone paparazzo that went viral instantly. While Richard's world crumbled, Olivia's expanded. She took immediate and decisive control of Hale Pictures. Her first act was to fire the sycophantic director of Ascendant and bring in a respected female editor, a Hollywood veteran known for saving troubled films. "The footage is beautiful, The editor, a woman named Catherine Hardwick, told Olivia after a marathon screening session. But the story is a mess. It's a monument to his ego. But there's another story in here. A quieter, more powerful one. If you let me, I think I can find it. Olivia gave her carte blanche. Find it, she said. The budget is no longer an issue. She proved to be a natural leader, a stark contrast to Richard's blustering dictatorial style. She listened to her team. She made decisions based on data and instinct, not ego. She promoted competent women within the company, who had been overlooked by Richard. Morale, which had been in the gutter, skyrocketed. The industry, which had been prepared to watch her fail, began to watch with a newfound respect. Olivia Hale was not a dilettante or a scorned wife seeking revenge. She was a serious, formidable player. Victoria Vance, meanwhile, had vanished. Dropped by her agent, her publicist, and her social circle, she became a Hollywood ghost. The notoriety she had craved had become a toxic brand. Every producer was afraid to touch her, lest they incur the wrath of the industry's newest and most powerful mogul. She had hitched her wagon to a falling star, and was now buried in its wreckage. There were rumors she had left the country, her 15 minutes of fame having cost her everything. Olivia never gave Victoria a second thought. She was focused on the future. She liquidated several of Richard's non-performing assets, that she now controlled a garish mansion in Miami, a private jet, his collection of absurdly expensive watches, and reinvested the capital into a new slate of films for Hale Pictures. She established a fund to support female directors and writers, turning her personal story into a mission. Benjamin Carter continued to work by her side, his pride in the woman she had become evident in his quiet, steadfast support. "Your father would be immensely proud, Olivia," he told her one afternoon, as they reviewed the company's quarterly projections, which were already looking healthier than they ever had under Richard. "You have his mind for strategy, but your mother's grace." The legal battle with Richard was brutal but short. Faced with irrefutable evidence of fraud and the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence, he had no choice but to settle. He walked away with a fraction of what he thought he was owed enough to live comfortably, but never to wield power again. He was stripped of his companies, his reputation, and his access to the world he had fought so hard to conquer. He was a ghost on Wall Street, a cautionary tale whispered at cocktail parties. Olivia, now legally Olivia Hale, again stood in her new office, which overlooked the Hollywood Hills. It was sleek and modern, decorated with a quiet, confident taste that was entirely her own. There were no monuments to ego, only works of art she genuinely loved, and photographs of the people who mattered. Her empire was not built from the ashes of Richard's, but from the solid foundation of her own strength, a foundation that had been there all along, waiting for the gilded crystal to fall away. 6 months later, Los Angeles was in the full throes of awards season. The city buzzed with a nervous, glittery energy, and the most talked-about film, the dark horse contender that had come out of nowhere to sweep the critics' awards and rack up a dozen Oscar nominations, was Ascendant. Under the masterful hand of its new editor and the clear-eyed vision of its executive producer, the film had been transformed. The bloated, self-important epic about a male conqueror had been recut into a subtle, poignant tragedy about the quiet, brilliant woman behind his throne, the wife whose intellect he exploited and whose heart he broke. It was a masterpiece of subversive storytelling, a film that held a mirror up to a system that so often credited men for the work of women. The irony was lost on no one. Olivia Hale sat for an interview in the living room of her new home in Bel Air. The house was nothing like the cold, sterile penthouse in New York. It was warm and inviting, filled with light books and the happy clutter of a life being truly lived. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the soft curve of her heavily pregnant belly. She was due any day. The interviewer was a seasoned journalist from Vanity Fair, a woman known for her incisive profiles of powerful figures. "Ms. Hale," she began, "in 6 months you've gone from a society wife to one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood. Your ex-husband is facing federal indictment. Your film is the front-runner for Best Picture. People are calling it the most brilliant act of revenge in modern history." Olivia offered a small, thoughtful smile. She had grown into her power with a grace that felt both innate and hard-won. "I don't see it as revenge," she said, her voice calm and measured. "Revenge is an emotional act. This was a business decision. My ex-husband made a series of poor investments, both personally and professionally. I simply corrected the market. But you can't deny the personal element. The premiere, it was a moment that will be talked about for decades." "The premiere was a necessary unveiling of the truth," Olivia conceded. "For too long, I allowed a false narrative to be written for me. I was cast as a supporting character in my own life. I decided it was time for a rewrite. I wanted my son to know that his mother wasn't a victim. She was the author of her own story." Her story had indeed become a source of inspiration. Hale Pictures was flourishing, championing stories that challenged the status quo. She had become a mentor to young women in the industry, her name synonymous with integrity and a quiet, unshakable strength. Later that week, on the night of the Academy Awards, Olivia walked the red carpet alone. She was not a +1 or an accessory. She was the main event. Dressed in a stunning, custom-made Schiaparelli gown that celebrated her pregnancy, she radiated a serene confidence that outshone all the starlets in their borrowed jewels. She didn't stop for many interviews, offering only a gracious smile to the sea of photographers. When Ascendant won Best Picture, the entire Dolby Theatre rose to its feet. Olivia walked to the stage to accept the award, joined by her creative team. She held the golden statuette, its weight feeling solid and real in her hands. She looked out at the sea of faces, the brightest stars in the cinematic firmament, all looking up at her. "I'm told a legacy is something you leave behind," she said, her voice clear and strong, echoing through the theatre and to millions watching around the world. "But I believe a legacy is also what you build for the future. I want to thank the Academy for this incredible honor. I accept it on behalf of all the women whose vision, strength, and brilliance have been the silent scaffolding for someone else's dream. May we all find the courage to claim our own stories." She ended her speech with a hand on her belly. "And this is for you," she whispered, a message meant only for her son, "our new beginning." As the applause thundered around her, Olivia Hale smiled. This was not the end of a dramatic story of betrayal and revenge. It was the beginning of a legacy not inherited, but forged in fire, reborn from the ashes and shining brighter than any Klieg light. A legacy of her own making. The story of Olivia Hale is more than just a tale of betrayal and spectacular revenge. It's a masterclass in empowerment. It's a testament to the quiet strength that lies dormant in those who are underestimated, and the incredible power that is unleashed when they finally decide to claim their own narrative. Olivia's journey from a silent partner in a gilded cage to the architect of her own empire reminds us that the greatest power isn't loud and boastful. It's strategic, intelligent, and patient. It's the power of knowing your own worth, even when the world tries to diminish it. If this story of triumph and justice resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of rewriting your own destiny, please show your support. hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories. Your support helps us continue to bring these powerful narratives to light.